Welcome to this episode of the Buzzin the Tower podcast. Thank you for tuning in once again. I'm your host, as always, Brian, and I'm excited to bring you this one. I decided to do a little podcast series of sorts, a la Serial, a series like Serial, but not as serious. So, alliteration aside, I decided to do a series about the 1994 strike-shortened baseball season, which was certainly a black mark on the game of baseball, and really just a sad thing to have happen in America's pastime. Obviously, there's no more serious things in life than baseball, but as a baseball fan, to not have a World Series, I mean, that's about as bad as it gets. So I'm going to do a quick overview of what kind of caused the strike. I'm going to keep that kind of brief, and then I'm going to get into my favorite player growing up, and that was Kirby Puckett. I was a little young to realize what was going on during all this, but I just knew that I didn't get to watch, Kirby and the Twins, my favorite team. So, I mean, I remember being a little sad about that when I was 6 or 7 years old or whatever. But then we're going to go through his season, and this whole series will be kind of a what could have been. And it'll outline some players who are having remarkable seasons, or teams that were doing something remarkable, or just maybe some little random tidbits. So if you have anybody or any teams or any facts you'd like me to have covered, please don't hesitate to comment on the YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and I'd love to get any recommendations you've got. So just go ahead and slide up in there and get some comments going. But all right, first we'll outline what happened. Leading into the 94 season, there had already been some labor discussions, put that in quotations, basically arguments about money between the owners and the players' union. The owners were looking to establish a salary cap in baseball, so basically limit the amount of money they had to spend to put product on the field and line their pockets with TV deals and less salaries. So obviously the players weren't about to have that, being the on-field talent. So there's obviously a huge discussion about that. The owners also were proposing to have a sort of like what the NBA has with restricted free agency. So after 4 or 5 years in the league, a player could hit free agency, but the team would have the chance to match whatever offers were given. So they were hoping to establish something like that. They're looking to eliminate arbitration, which would be a big deal. They're also looking to, I don't know if this is a concession they gave to the players, but give them the chance to hit free agency after 4 years of team control instead of 6. So these are some pretty major issues that were going on, and the two big faces of this whole thing were Bud Selig on the owners and commissioners side, and Donald Fear, who was representing the players union. So if there's two bad guys in this whole thing that stripped us of a World Series for a year, it's probably those two guys. So if you want to tweet at them, I don't know if they have Facebook or whatever, let them know I'm talking about them. So, but so as the discussions went on throughout the season, the 1994 season was, I don't know if you can call it the heart of the steroid era, but it's definitely at least the lungs. It's right there next to it. Some preposterous offensive numbers were going up. Some remarkable players were having incredible seasons. But in the background, there's sort of this feeling of, are we going to finish this thing? Or are we going to get locked out? Is there going to be a strike? So there's kind of a black cloud hanging over the whole season. And then finally, the discussions got so bad, the players union, or the players, I should say, went on strike as of August. They went on strike August 12th. And then by September 14th, Bud Selig had canceled the World Series, so they basically just stripped the rest of that season. Most teams got to play 113 games, and obviously there was no playoffs, no World Series once again, so they just took whatever they had there, called it a full season, and kind of just said, see you next year. The reason I decided to cover 94 is 95 was actually strike shortened as well, but that was the front half of the season, not the back half. So there wasn't this feeling of what could have been at the end of 95 because there was a World Series, there was a playoff and all that. So I decided to go with 94. Don't know how I came across this. The 25th anniversary is next year. Thanks to talked to a couple of guys and got some good advice and good ideas on what to do with this series. So I'm excited to bring this to you. So let's jump into old number 34, Kirby Puckett. Now, of the 113 games that year for the Twins, Kirby played in 108. He had moved over to right field for the first time in his career, and his defense, I mean, everybody remembers the catch in 91. Everybody remembers him, leaping over the fence and making great throws out of center. But by 1993, his defense had really gone downhill. In fact, D-WAR is like defensive wins above replacement. You'll hear me talk about WAR a lot, and that's wins above replacement. That's sort of a holistic measure of you versus just plugging an average player in there. So if it's negative, that means just throwing an average MLB player in there would be better than having what you're doing. And Kirby in 1993 in center field was a -3.1 to be exact. So he really had a tough season out there in center field, despite all the great Gold Glove caliber seasons he'd had. He had really kind of regressed in terms of his defense. So that the Twins had Alex Cole, who's a super speedy guy, up with them that year. So they moved Puck to right field, and that actually made the difference. In 1994, he was a positive +0.2. So the move to right field was a beneficial one, but he was having a huge season at the plate. He was really the beneficiary of a strong lineup the Twins had. And, I mean, there's a lot of strong lineups going on in the majors that year. But, you had Chuck Knobloch, great on-base guy. Alex Cole, great on-base guy. Both great base stealers in front of him. So he was definitely the beneficiary of that. Puck was batting .317 with 20 homers and 112 RBIs at the time the strike went on, and the 112 RBIs was actually leading the league. Now, we could sit here and do another podcast on the actual value of RBIs, but obviously that's getting it done right there with 20 homers, 112 ribbies. He also had a .902 OPS, which was one of the best marks of his career. So it wasn't like he was just getting lucky with people on base. Obviously the value of the RBIs can be debated in terms of, is somebody clutch? Can somebody... Well, you know what? He was. So he was knocking the guys home, and 112 if you're leading the American League in a counting category in 1994, you're really having a huge season. So him batting third in the middle of that order was really a huge thing. Now, what I did was also I extrapolated that over 162 games, because obviously we got it cut short there. Thanks, Bud Selig. So he was on a 162 game pace. Obviously still had the .317 average. He was on pace for 29 homers and 161 RBIs. His previous high was actually 121, so he'd have absolutely shattered that. He's on pace for a 5.16 WAR, and in terms of wins above replacement, 5 is considered all-star caliber. So he's definitely having a good season. And his OPS plus, which is on base plus slugging, but it's adjusted against the rest of the league. So that takes into factors like league environment in terms of, if it's like 1994, everybody's putting up huge numbers. So it's adjusted on a scale like 100 being league average. So he was 29 percentage points higher than the league average, and actually his career OPS plus is 124. So he's even above his career marks, despite the fact that he had been in the league for 10 years. His legs had slowed down a little bit, but the bat was still there. So I think that Puck was definitely on his way to something special. He was definitely swinging one of the best bats of his career in the middle of that lineup. So it was obviously, looking back, I'd like to give 6-year-old Brian a hug and tell him it's going to be all right. It's just baseball. But it would have been nice to see what Puck could do the rest of that year. He was having one of his best statistical years. I wonder if moving to right field maybe helped him, not with his legs, not have to cover much ground. His bat never really went away, but it's tough to know. But once again, this is why we're doing these podcasts, is sort of what could have been with these guys. Another tool that Baseball Reference has that I kind of like is you can take batting seasons and put them in a different environment. So let's say you can take a 1994 guy like we're going to do, and put it into 2018 in a neutralized sort of fashion, because the 2018, despite the fact that a lot of teams are scoring quite a bit of runs, is a significantly less beneficial hitting environment than 1994. So I was able to take his numbers from 1994 and sort of do a hypothetical plug into what it would be in 2018, and they're still phenomenal numbers. 295 batting average, 26 homers, 135 ribbies, and an 842 OPS, which that's getting it done right there. That's all-star caliber right there. So, in any era, Puck was having a great season. But, thanks to Bud Selig, we will never know. As for the Twins, we touched on it a little bit. Their lineup was pretty potent, and once again, the lineups in 1994. If you didn't have a potent lineup, then I don't know. You maybe needed to bring Jose Canseco to your clubhouse for a couple of weeks and get some guys on some supplements of some kind. But Chuck Knobloch and Shane Mack were actually the two leaders in WAR above Kirby. Knobloch had a WAR of 4.1, and Shane Mack had a WAR of 3.9. Now, Shane Mack is probably a name that some of you might not know. Knobloch obviously is very recognizable for a lot of reasons, a lot of them being off the field, a lot of them being him selling his soul to New York, and also getting batteries thrown at him in left field at the Metrodome. But Shane Mack, in my opinion, who was another one of my favorite players growing up, I think he was a criminally underrated Twin. He actually had a couple of really, really good seasons, and we talked about Kirby's OPS plus being at 129, which is 29 percentage points above the league average. Shane Mack was actually carrying an OPS plus of 147 that year, so he was really, really hitting well. He sort of mixed in the lineup in the middle, but for the large part, it was Knobloch and Alex Cole in front of Kirby, and both of those guys were on pace for probably 40-plus steals, both in the high 370s to 400 and on-base percentage. So Puckett had a lot of guys on base in front of him, and he was getting the job done, and same with Shane Mack behind him. Mack kind of mixed in because a couple other recognizable names were in this Twins lineup with Kent Herbeck, which ended up turning out to be his last season that got cut short. I believe he only played in 80 games. He started dealing with some injuries and stuff like that, but he generally hit cleanup behind Kirby, just like the Wheaties box. So it ended up being Herbie's last season. He had an OPS plus of 99, so he was just slightly below the league average, which, I mean, it's probably still a decent OPS compared to today, just because of the run scoring environment. But also Dave Winfield was on that team, a former Golden Gopher, a Hall of Famer. Guy who ended up getting his 3,000th hit with the Twins. This was also his last season with the Twins, but he struggled mightily, especially for a DH. He ended up with an OPS plus of 91. The Twins ended up fourth in their division with a record of 53-60. So despite their offensive prowess, they still were 7 games below 500. So it was a very improbable thing that the Twins would have made the playoffs with the way they were going, but once again, what playoffs, we'll never know. So I really enjoy, digging into this sort of process and looking at some of these guys. So if there's somebody you want me to break down, I've already gotten some great suggestions. I'm really looking forward to just doing a bunch of short podcasts. I'll try to get them out weekly. I'm my own boss, so I can make my own rules, but my boss doesn't pay me very well. But I'm going to try my best to get these out weekly and get a new topic or a new player or a new team out there. So if you got anybody you'd like to have me break down on this podcast, just comment on Facebook or YouTube, Twitter, SoundCloud, whatever, all the above. You can text me, I don't care. But I'm looking forward to next week and jumping into a new topic. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back hopefully next week. Hopefully the Twins can make a run in 2018 and we can do a podcast 24 years in the future talking about the Twins' run they made in 2018 in the World Series or something like that. But that might be wishful thinking. But thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you again soon.